Good morning and welcome to the NBA Daily. Coming up, Luka returned to Dallas. We talked to Christian Clark about it after the game. The Warriors lose on a buzzer beater, and the Nuggets play a game with Nikola Jokic as head coach. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Es.
Good morning, Dave.
Yeah. Got another wild night, man. Somehow we're approaching the end of the regular season, and every single night is just nuts from here on out. We got to start with the big news of the day. Luka Doncic went back to Dallas and just dominated, put up 45 points. What did you expect coming into this, S? Obviously, look, it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
I will just say straight up, I didn't think it was going to be as emotional to start with. I did feel like it was going to feel like a big moment, but I didn't expect what we started with.
It was really emotional seeing Luka react to the tribute video. I mean, I got emotional watching it because it did feel like he wanted to be a Maverick for the rest of his career, to live in Dallas for the rest of his life type of thing. And you could see in that moment sort of a bit of closure from him, understanding that this is over and this is just part of the chapter, move on. And now I'm going to drop 45 points on you guys. Like I thought the way that he kind of channeled that energy into the game, especially in the first half, he dropped 31 points. It was electric. I honestly think that's one of those games where you look back on 5 years from now and say, where were you when you watched Luka return to Dallas? Because it felt like one of those hardwood classic type of moments to watch him do that.
That's a great point. We will talk about this when he's inducted into the Hall of Fame. We'll talk about the game. Yeah. The fact is, he always steps up, it seems, for these big games, and this had a playoff feel to it. Number one, it was surreal. Just watching the atmosphere inside the arena seemed amazing. We talked to Christian after the break, and he really describes it in great detail, what it was like to be in the building. But watching at home, I mean, I felt it. It felt like a weight was on this game. And even though the Mavericks, this isn't a team that anyone has any expectations of, I thought that they rose to the moment, obviously, like trying to, they have a lot to prove too here, right? Like it's the Luka Doncic trade, but there's a lot of other Dallas Mavericks. So I thought, I tipped the cap to them. They're not as good as the Lakers. What did you see out of the Lakers in this game? Again, this is another big game that the Lakers rise to the occasion for. It could have been a letdown. Look, they had the two big games against the Thunder. Obviously, this is a back-to-back, and they were in the game until they weren't, against the Thunder. So what did you think about how the Lakers performed?
I, first of all, love the fact that they played everybody in the back-to-back. They played OKC last night. Everybody played, and they played everybody tonight against Dallas. And I thought that was a big indication of like how we're trying to prep for the rest of this season in the postseason. Like they are ready to play. And on top of that, I think the fact that they lost the lead in the fourth quarter and found a way to recalibrate. LeBron took over, had some huge possessions in that fourth quarter, got a couple of and ones, made a few defensive stops. They leaned onto their small ball lineup. And I think that's going to be their calling card. You look at that lineup with LeBron James, with Austin Reeves, Dorian Finney-Smith, Rui Hachimura. They have a lot of functional size with that group, and they just dominate every time they put it out there. It's awesome.
I like it even more when they go with Jared Vanderbilt, Dorian Finney-Smith, and LeBron is essentially the five. And, we saw this a little bit against the Nuggets. LeBron can actually guard some of these guys. He can, man. He's did big. Pretty well against Gafford inside, against the Mavericks. Again, the Jokic stuff, I mean, he is like, I don't know, 275 or something like that.
Sengun against the Rockets that one time. Yeah.
And I do think, I'm with you. I think that, look, Jackson Hayes is going to have to give him 25 good minutes. But between Vando, Dorian Finney-Smith, and LeBron, and with the way that they've been moving on defense, I'd give them a pretty good chance against the Nuggets, like with a center like Jokic. They can fly too.
They won those minutes by 30 points. They played 18 minutes together, that starting five, or that small ball unit. They won them by 30 points tonight. They had a 78 in that rate. Like it was just,
Anthony Davis is a four, right? So, he couldn't do that when he was there. Look, we got to talk about the Warriors because they suffered a very bad loss for their playoff hopes Huge. Look, Harrison Barnes had a hilarious sequence to end this game. He intentionally fouls Draymond Green to put him on the line with the Warriors down 2 with 3 seconds left. Great move. That is a high IQ basketball play. Draymond nails both of those free throws. 3 seconds left. The Kings have advanced the ball, sideline out of bounds, and the Warriors, look, they know they're not. No one's calling a foul here. Draymond is on his man like a backpack. You got Jimmy Butler grabbing and pulling at Harrison Barnes. Harrison Barnes breaks free, takes a wild falling back.
Yeah, it was a tough shot
with Jimmy Butler in his face, and it's cash money, and the Spurs win. Warriors were just so sloppy down the stretch, but shout out to Harrison Barnes, professional basketball.
No, shout out to Harrison Barnes. You actually saw him when he fouled Draymond. He did that's all right with me. That's funny. Okay with me. He had the little nod. And so it's cool because of the history that Harrison Barnes has with the Warriors. He kind of gets revenge in a tough situation for them. This, like you said, is a must win for Golden State. They now move to 7th in the Western Conference. Things are always fluid, but it puts them on uneven ground a little bit when it comes to that play-in. And we've talked about how important it is for them to not be in the play-in tournament. Miss a week, get a week off, give Steph Curry's knees some rest. And now this puts that in danger.
This game is exactly why I don't trust the Warriors in the single game. All right. Steph Curry can win you any game, but also the Warriors have this habit of not necessarily valuing the basketball down the stretch of games.
The turnovers, man. Yeah.
It was brutal. And some of them they were nonsensical. They directly threw the ball away a couple of times. So, the Warriors got to tighten this stuff up. I mean, again, we could throw this one out because it's just a one-off loss and they're 22-7 since the Jimmy Butler trade or whatever, but they need to win the rest of their games because they absolutely I would be very scared if I were them to get into the play.
Do you remember when the Spurs beat the Nuggets last year and it kind of ruined the Nuggets' chances of winning the West? And now the Warriors lose to the Spurs and might ruin their chances of getting a top 6 spot.
Spurs beat the Nuggets last week, didn't they?
They did.
Yeah. I mean, the Spurs, look, that's the harbinger of doom for your franchise. Speaking of the Nuggets, they played a game, first game without former head coach Michael Malone, and they won. They beat the Kings. The Kings have been hot, and the Nuggets have not. And so we've got a little bit of a reversal of fortune there. No Malik Monk for the Kings, and he's going to be out for the rest of the year and probably the play-in. Yeah. So, I mean, likely just done for the year because I don't think we expect the Kings to make it into the playoffs. But look, the Nuggets, there's nothing to say. They're not going to make any wholesale changes, really. There were some rotation changes that we should get into. But I do want to point out, it took one game for Nikola Jokic post Michael Malone to have multiple times on the sideline where he's got he's drawing up plays on the whiteboard. I mean, like we're borderline at the point where does it matter who the coach is?
Right. Yeah. He's the player coach at this point. He's going to do the whole thing where I mean, look, I could see it. It's not a bad idea. And Adelman is more of just a consultant at this point for what they want to do. Look, I think one of the more interesting things that I saw from the Nuggets was, and look, no Jamal Murray here. So this is a caveat to all this thing, but more Jalen Pickett than Russell Westbrook. A lot of Jalen Pickett. And I actually kind of like Jalen Pickett's game. Good defender, can knock down a shot, especially tonight. He did a good job. But Russell Westbrook ended up playing 16 minutes in this game. Ooh. And he played 25 in their last game, 19 in the one before that. Seems like his minutes are going down. I don't know if that's necessarily a coaching decision or just he was having a bad game tonight and they decided to go a different direction. But I do like what Jalen Pickett provides for this team. And maybe that's the directive from the front office. Play these young guys more to give them opportunity to get some run.
I think Jalen Pickett directly was a point of contention between the front office and Michael Malone. I mean, it is. I do think that was pretty clear. I mean, the young players in general were a point of contention. Michael Malone wanted to play the veterans. And just in this game, look, Jalen Pickett, you know exactly how he fits. Plus 12 in the game, 5 of 7 from 3, and in particular when Jamal Murray is out. But the thing is, the hope is you're going into the playoffs and you're going to have Jamal Murray. Having a Jalen Pickett come off the bench That's a net positive for you because it's another guy who can do stuff off of Jokic because of his ability to shoot. And you mentioned physicality on defense. Look, Russ has gotten them to the point where they're at, right? He raised the level of intensity for this team. Totally. He has created a lot of leadership. I actually think that as they go into the playoffs and they tighten up this rotation, we should see a lot less of Russell Westbrook. And you bring him in when you need a high energy moment or you've got a nice lead and you just want a guy out there who can be a caretaker because it is Russell Westbrook. Like he still is an effective player who can change the game. The problem is you have too much Russ and it changes the game in the wrong way.
Yeah, it's kind of like a scientific formula. You're trying to find the perfect balance to be able to get the right amount of Russ in any single game. Like he'll be able to give you 25 on a random night, but how are you going to punch in for the 15 minutes that you're on the floor? That's the next phase for Russ and this Nuggets team for sure.
And we didn't even say this, but Jokic, in addition to coaching the team, put up his 33rd triple-double of the season.
Very nice.
Yeah, not too bad. Added 4 steals.
Hey, by the way, OKC locked up home court advantage throughout the playoffs with a win over the Suns today, which is massive.
Andrew, I know you're listening right now. Look, if they make the finals, make some driveway space. I'm bringing the van. We're going to hang out. We're going to barbecue in the front yard. Guys, stick around after the break. Christian Clark's here to break down what it was like to be in the building and some of the weird quotes that came out of last night's game between the Lakers and the Mavericks. Last night, Luka Doncic returned to Dallas and did not disappoint. He put up 45 points. He showed all the reasons why the Mavericks definitely made a huge mistake by trading him. There to cover it and who covers the Mavericks for us, Christian Clark. What the heck was it like in the building? Watching on television, it was electric and emotional. And obviously the chants were just out of this world. But what was it like to be in the building for Luka coming home?
Yeah, a mixture of love and hate. I would say that the love outweighed the hate. It was a lot of love for Luka Doncic as soon as he stepped on the court. I thought it was a cool little moment. You know, the Lakers took the floor for warm-ups, and he comes in and he just banks the shot off the shot clock, you know, like shoots it 10 feet above the basket and it just drops in. It was a little moment of Luka magic. I mean, he was just on the entire night, 31 in the first half. I mean, anytime he touched the ball, the crowd loved it. And then, yeah, the hate, I mean, really just directed towards one person, you know, Nico Harrison, who made this trade. But I would say overall fun night. I mean, I would say overall like more positive than negative. I think the fans love this.
Yeah. I mean, look, this was actually my big takeaway is that if you're going to have to go through something like this, that was honestly a really nice moment. You know, Luka, obviously he was never going to leave. It felt like, you know, when he's watching that video and kind of going through those moments. I mean, you know, we're kind of texting on the side during this and we're saying there's no way, like, how is he going to come tears in his eyes? How is he going to do anything? And then, you know, has that. Well,
I was surprised that they did a tribute video in the first place. I'm not necessarily surprised that they did it because I knew it was expected, but it was a sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation from the Mavericks after the last couple of months of, you know, kind of conversation around why they traded him. What was the reasoning? Was it out of shape? All that type of stuff that kind of went around. And you see the emotion on Luka during that tribute video. And to me, I was like, oh man, what response are we going to get from Luka Doncic with the amount of emotion that he's showing 25 seconds before we do tip off? So I was surprised that he jumped out to such an incredible start. Christian, from your perspective, do you feel like this was made to be a moment for Luka? You know, the thank you shirts, everything that you saw. Like, was this the Mavericks organization trying their best to maybe mend ties with Luka Doncic?
Yeah, there's no question about it. I think the organization realized that their messaging was really bad right after the Luka Doncic trade. It's like, however you actually feel about him, the reasons for this trade, he still led you to the finals and won a ton. And you know, had this genuine connection with the fan base. I mean, they I think correctly decided we need to change our messaging and we need to show appreciation for this guy, which he absolutely deserves. And he was super emotional before the game. I mean, that was a beautiful moment with him, tears welling in his eyes when he was watching that tribute video. And then he was able to stay really even keeled during the game. I mean, the night before in Oklahoma City, you know, got in a yelling match with the fan, got ejected, you know, emotions his emotions sometimes run too hot, but I thought he did a really good job of just, staying even killed. I mean, there was definitely some talking, like he was saying some stuff to the bench in the second half, but he stayed pretty even. And I mean, he was just unbelievable. The step back three is working.
Yeah. The Lakers, I thought they didn't have any flow to start. It seemed like the entire team was actually affected, which, is pretty rare, I would say. They obviously were trying to force the ball to Luka to start, but once they got into the flow of things, that offense started to click. For the Dallas perspective, this is a team that obviously they've dealt with injury stuff, but it just felt like they didn't really have a chance to compete with the Lakers just without Kyrie, no real ball handler out there. And you can see the vision with Anthony Davis and some ball handling around him, but they just don't have it right now.
That's exactly right. I mean, look, the Mavericks shortened their title contention window when they traded Luka, and they're like, look, we got 2, 3, maybe 4 chances at that. I mean, when Kyrie went down, that automatically erased their chance this year. That maybe erases their chances next year, depending on how you look at that. I mean, that's 2 of the 3 or 4 chances that they had right there. I mean, that's huge gut punch. I mean, you're right. They don't have enough to compete right now. I mean, they tried starting like Najee Marshall basically at lead guard, and he played really well.
Yeah.
But that's the place they're at. It's like we don't have Kyrie. We're already really dependent on him. Like they've just got to try stuff like that. It's like Najee.
AD has no space to operate in, at all.
Yeah, I mean, they needed Kyrie to carry a huge load in terms of just the half court offense.
Christian, I want to ask you about the behind the scenes of this whole situation, because I imagine, much like myself, there are a lot of people wondering how in the world Luka Doncic is a member of the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, it's 2 months in and I'm still surprised. And, there's been reporting, obviously you've reported it as well, that there's obviously a behind the scenes situation between Mark Cuban and the now president of operations and Patrick Dumont and Nico Harrison. How does that play into this decision to trade Luka Doncic and how that all unfolded?
Yeah, I mean, Mark Cuban hired Nico Harrison to complement him in terms of making basketball decisions in 2021. But the power dynamics of this organization changed in December 2023 when Mark Cuban had to sell. I mean, when Mark Cuban sold his team to Miriam Alderson, he said, hey, look, I'm still going to have a lot of influence over basketball decisions. But that's not what happened in reality. I mean, Patrick Dumont is his team's governor, and Patrick Dumont listens to Nico Harrison on basketball decisions. I mean, this was always a Nico Harrison decision, and the sale of the team just created a situation where suddenly Nico had all the juice.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, though, to play devil's advocate here, the guy has made some really great moves. I mean, he's like 9 for 11 or something like on the moves that he's made. You consider bringing in Kyrie, drafting Derek Lively, getting PJ Washington. He has done a pretty good job. I think the Luka trade obviously stands out, and then the Quentin Grimes trade maybe stands out. But if you're the new owner and this guy has just taken you to an NBA Finals, with the team that he built, and he says, hey, we should move on from this, and I think we can be better. I totally can wrap my head around living, by his word. But that being said, the NBA business doesn't operate that way, Christian. And so how much of this is new ownership that's not looking at an NBA team as, something that's a passion for them, like Mark Cuban was, and it's an ownership that's looking more of it as, what does it mean to our balance sheet overall throughout all of the entities that we may invest in?
I don't really view it as a money thing. I mean, Miriam Adelson is worth like $32 billion, and I think they're still even in the luxury tax right now. Like, I don't think it's. I think it's more just an experience thing, and I think what you brought up is Patrick Dumont's first experience, running this team was, oh my gosh, Nico Harrison makes trades for PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. The reaction nationally to that is mixed, and it turns out they're great trades. These trades help us go to the NBA Finals. So, one of the first really key pieces of information he gets about Nico Harrison's decision-making is, oh, wow, this guy can really read the board. He really sees the board correctly. So, of course, I'm going to trust this guy. We got to the finals in my first year owning this team. And, I think Nico Harrison has made a lot of good moves as Mavericks GM. It's just, this is a situation where it's like, don't do it like this. And if you're going to do this, you have to get everything. And they didn't get everything. You know, like you got to get Reeves, connect multiple first round picks. Right. Like they didn't even come close.
You can make a lot of good moves, but then if you trade Babe Ruth, like it's a different story, right? I mean, look, I know there was that quote from Jason Kidd. What was said post game, or what's the feeling like after the game? You know, from the Mavericks' perspective, after this, it was just a very bizarre and awesome basketball game from the Lakers.
Yeah, I would say two things mostly. That was the messaging from the Mavericks. Number one, huge respect to Luka. I mean, Jason Kidd said you had to tip your hat to him. There was a moment after the game where Anthony Davis and Luka Doncic hugged at midcourt that I thought was a cool moment. You know, right after that game, I asked AD about it in the locker room afterwards, and he was basically like, you know, we kind of did go through similar things that neither of us asked for this, but really it was a respect thing. I just think that, you know, greatness respects greatness, and that was kind of what that was about. And there was frustration too. I mean, I asked Anthony Davis like about the Fire Nico stuff, and he was just like, I just don't want to comment on that. You know, Jason Kidd got asked, how does this fan base move past this? And it was kind of an interesting answer. So a lot of respect to Luka, and I think frustration. And what can you even say after you trade this guy and he has 45 points? I mean, what can you say?
It was the weirdest arena I think I've ever experienced, in the sense that the away fan base was cheering for a player when he caught the ball. You usually see boos when a player catches the ball. I've never seen that. The
number of Luka Lakers jerseys, I think, spoke volumes. I mean, when it looked like a Laker home game when in some of those tight shots on TV. And I think that essentially what you've got is that instead of Mavs fans for life, a lot of Luka Doncic fans probably are going to leave that team. I'm not sure. And Christian, you know, I'm not going to ask you to comment on this, but I don't know how a team comes back from a night like last night where the GM is, I mean, essentially openly being called to be fired by, you know, 18,000 people on national television, to the point where the broadcasters have to comment on it. And it is the single worst trade in sports history. Christian, what is the summer like? Look, this is a play-in team. It looks like, you know, I mean, Phoenix is still alive, maybe, but it looks like they're going to be in the play-in. I don't think they're going to make a lot of noise for the reasons that we've sort of laid out. But, you know, what's the summer going to look like for this team?
Yeah, when you ask Jason Kidd and Nico that question, I mean, how do you guys come back from this? How do you repair this? They say winning, and you can kind of quibble with that. It's like, this is almost deeper than winning. But I think of just how to move forward. You know, Kyrie's going to miss significant time next season. They have to do something just to address offensive initiation. And I think there are big moves you could look at. I think there are medium-sized moves you could look at. I mean, they're already all in, and it's almost like you almost have to go more all in. I mean, they don't control the draft picks 27 through 2030, all those years, but it's almost a situation where it's like, we're already all in. We just have to push more chips in and just hope. And they have to do something to address the creation and, like, you know, half court offense.
Yeah, the Kevin Durant sweepstakes is going to be awesome. Christian Clark covers the Mavs for us. Thank you for hanging out. Es Baraheni, he does this quite often. I'm Dave DuFour. This has been the NBA Daily. Thanks for waking up with us.